Welcome to QDL. QDL is your look at who and what is making news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest. Because quality management is both a hard and a soft discipline, it is constantly buffeted by technological advances and changing social perspectives. So, for instance, advancements in sensor and computer technology let us analyze processes faster and in ways we were never able to do in the past. Or our ideas of management are constantly changing, from command and control to team-based to hybrid forms. And the idea that quality is this department's job to quality is everyone's job. So the idea of quality management is constantly changing. And the last year has really brought some of this to the fore in some pretty startling ways. So here with us today to talk about some of the trends in quality management is Morgan Palmer, Chief Technology Officer at ETQ. ETQ is a leading provider of cloud-native quality management software. Morgan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Dirk. Glad to be here.
Hey, no problem. You know, at Quality Digest, in our coverage, we seem to be seeing a lot of new requirements for quality management, in part, I think, because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Has that been your experience at ETQ?
I wouldn't say as much new requirements as accelerating requirements. So these are requirements that have been hanging around for a while, and we've seen them accelerate because of the COVID-19 situation. And I'll give you a couple of examples. One for sure, and this is not unique to quality management, is the shift to cloud. There's a huge acceleration in our customers bringing their quality management system to the cloud. We've been operating in the cloud for over 10 years. We know it's the future for our customers and for quality management, just like it is for most software systems. However, a lot of customers were dragging their feet, and now they're not. Now they're rushing to the doors to say, get us into the cloud as quickly as possible, because when people are not on site, right, in their offices, when you need to react quickly, adapt quickly to change, the cloud is the best way to do it.
So nothing, so there's no new requirements. It's just that everything has just been pushed up.
I would say yes, and there's some key areas where it's being pushed up much quicker than before. I'll give you just two other areas, starting with one which is more of a general one in quality management, which is this concept of quality being mission critical. We in quality always believe that quality is mission critical, but sometimes the companies themselves put it lower level of priority. In fact, the function is known to be critical, mission critical, because often you can't ship product without a good quality system or without passing all the quality gates. In addition, if you have quality issues, significant quality issues, it can literally shut down your plant. So no doubt the function is quality is mission critical, but the systems that support it have never been considered mission critical up to this point. And now we're seeing customers truly flag quality management systems as mission critical systems that need to be up 24/7. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the cloud-based deployment, because in the cloud, you can have a much more consistent experience for mission critical systems.
And how has this impacted quality management, the actual day-to-day quality management function?
Yeah, well, I think it's given more importance to the professionals that work in quality management. They're being looked at with a slightly different lens. If you will, it's now coming up to the same level as ERP. Mm-hmm. Right, and MES systems, and I'm talking from obviously from a solution perspective, but that's also true of the function itself. Quality is seen now as just a much more important function in the organization. And I'll highlight one specific area which we see, which has progressed, we think, very fast during this pandemic situation, which is the concept of supply chain quality.
Sure.
So our customers do a good job of managing quality within their four walls. It's more challenging to manage quality across organizations, such as within the supplier's four walls. And if you have multiple levels of suppliers, as is quite common now in the complex supply chains that we see in the world, it's actually quite difficult to see what's going on from a quality perspective in those organizations. That's typically done through email, phone, visits, audits. A lot of that was disrupted. And so what we saw an acceleration in is the concept of taking internal workflows, quality management workflows, like, for example, the the corrective action process, or the auditing process, or the document control process, or the training process, or the non-conformance reporting process, and then extending that to the supplier, so that the suppliers are actually collaborating with the customer in real time. Now, that creates two things. It creates a much more resilient quality management process that cuts across organizations, and it also makes that process much more ready to, or able to change and adapt. And as one of the things the pandemic taught us is that the start of the pandemic was a huge change. But what was interesting is throughout the pandemic, we're seeing many, many small changes as well. The cycle of change of the macro and business environment is such that people now recognize they have to be continuously adapting. And that's true in quality management, just like it is in other processes.
You know, I have a lot of friends who work in education, and they've been forced into all of a sudden having to work with, you know, various cloud applications and all of that, basically forced into it. I'm sure quality managers were all of a sudden, they're forced into doing everything remotely and, you know, learning, you know, what even is the cloud and so on. So they weren't that dumb, but you know what I'm saying is that
yeah.
I'm sure they were all of a sudden dumped into having to do all this stuff remotely. How do software providers like ETQ, or how did you make that easier for them to make that rather swift transition to being day-to-day hands-on with their employees to all of a sudden trying to do everything remotely?
Yeah, so I think there's maybe two parts of that problem. One is the function has to be done remotely, like for example a remote audit, and that certainly is something that our customers have to adapt to, and there's technology to support that. Actually, the general quality management technology is already kind of designed to work remotely. It's just the people themselves were used to traveling and doing it on site, and then they would update the audit information online, typically later on. Some auditors are using mobile tablets now when they're on the road, but in fact, in a true remote environment, what was kind of ironic is the whole push to mobile actually took a step back, because they no longer have the opportunity to use a mobile device because they're not traveling, they're not on site, right? So we were seeing steady progression in the take-up of mobile systems, and we have a strong, mobile component to our solution. That was sort of, I guess, it hasn't stagnated, but it's certainly not accelerated as fast as we thought because people are not traveling anymore. However, you're absolutely right. Now people are quite comfortable getting on a Zoom call and typing the information real time. It actually saves time because they're not, doing it on paper or on an Excel sheet or on a tablet and then moving it into the online system later on. So I think that was pretty seamless for our customers. They were kind of used to using the online systems. It's not true for the companies that are not our customers, if you will, who don't have an enterprise quality management system. Okay. Where they're using a hodgepodge of in-house applications like maybe SharePoint or even paper. And at that point, it would have been very disruptive.
And was ETQ caught off guard by any, new requirements, new requests? I mean, as people all of a sudden were working remotely, was there anything that came to the fore that, hey, you guys really need to be doing this because we're kind of hamstrung right now?
I would say not really. Again, we've sourced some emphasis in certain areas like, auditing that I mentioned, like supply chain quality, but nothing's really new. I would say the biggest new realization we had is just how mission critical quality management is when everything is remote. They've just put a lot more emphasis on making sure the system's up and running, that they have the information when they need it. They can't just go out and talk to somebody, right? I mean, it's all got to be there. So I think that's the biggest new requirement that we noticed. Nothing really functional has changed. It's just progressed.
Okay. Now, how about advances in AI and machine learning? How are those impacting quality management, or are they? Is that kind of in a different realm?
They are, and that's not driven by the pandemic situation, but it is an example of a new requirement for sure. I'll just say, right from the outset that the quality management, area or function is very new to AI and machine learning. So our customers are just dipping their toe into it. But we do have customers that are using true machine learning technologies to deliver true machine learning and AI use cases, specifically around augmenting the quality professional. So what I mean by that is quality professionals, one of their hardest parts of their job is they have to make pretty critical decisions all day long. And they're analyzing a lot of information, which the QMS supports them with. But in the end, it comes down to them making a decision. Are we going to escalate this issue? Are we going to, at the high end, are we going to do a recall? How much emphasis are we going to put on the investigation? How far are we going to take the investigation? Who are we going to involve? A lot of decisions that require a lot of thought and a lot of time. And because the volume of work is so big, it's quite common for these decisions to be wrong. Now, these things will be caught later on, right? Because we have multiple layers of defense, if you will, in the quality management system. But as everyone knows, the later you catch a problem, the more expensive it is. Where we see machine learning stepping in, and this is some of the use cases that our customers are doing, and not just in quality, also in the safety management space, which is very similar and related, is they're providing recommendations to the user in real time in order to guide their decision. We're not replacing the user here. We're not making the decision, but we're making recommendations that cut down on the false positives, the mistakes. And that can have a significant impact. Just to give you a real life example, this is more of a safety management example, but again, very similar. It was an analysis of data that comes in for these incidents, right? These are safety incidents, which are very similar to quality incidents. And the problem with these incidents is people were reacting too quickly. They were causing a lot of work to be done when work wasn't needed. Right. So they were overcompensating for the reports. They applied machine learning to it and were able to get rid of many of the false positives so that people could focus their attention on just what was needed. And I think we see a lot of that in quality. Because the decisions are so critical, people are very conservative. And I think they'll in many cases overwork the issue or maybe have a bigger, the net will be too big and they'll catch too many things. Machine learning can really help with that because the truth be told, there's so much data now, it's impossible for humans to process it.
So the machine learning basically kind of helps filter out what's really important for them to be looking at, and that's what gets presented to them?
Yes, that's part of it. But we also recognize, because again, we're in the early stages of the use of machine learning, that we have to provide all the data anyway. But you think of it as more progressive discovery, right? Where they get presented with what we recommend, and then they can expand and say, okay, well, I'm not sure I agree with that, or even more important, I want to understand why the recommendation. So show me what went into this.
Right.
So a good example of that, which is another use case that we're working on, is the concept of a trend. Well, everyone knows what a trend is, right? You have a time series and you extend the time series into the future using a trend calculation. If you apply machine learning to that, you can get a trend with a cone of confidence where it says the trend could be this, or it could be that, or it could be that. And depending on the data that's being used, you can understand what's causing the difference. And then when you start getting that understanding, you start having more confidence and you can start using machine learning for trending, in this case, much more effectively.
Okay. Now, I think you told me earlier you've been with ETQ for, did you say 27 years?
27 years, yeah.
27 years. Okay. So you've been following this industry for a really long time. So you kind of seen what it was like 27 years ago, what it's like now. Where do you think quality management is going? And I guess both from maybe a technical view, since you're the CTO, but maybe just in general. As you look down the future and you're trying to develop products, what are you looking at where you see quality going?
So there's a lot of things that we're working on, but I think the one big trend is something that I think has been lurking in the background for a long time, which is some way of combining quality management, which is what we do, and quality control. So the SPC data, which is what a lot of other software solutions, but also hardware solutions do. So there's a lot of data that's being pumped out of the machines, equipment, could be metrology machines or wearables and just manufacturing equipment. A lot of data is quality data that's being analyzed for itself, in its domain, but not linked up to the broader quality management trends. And similarly, in the quality management space, we talk a lot about complaints and audits and non-conformances and out-of-spec investigations. And that's good stuff. And we've got great processes for fixing those things, but we're not effectively relating it to the actual data that's coming off the shop floor. And I think marrying those two worlds is something that is a huge opportunity, something that we're working on, but it won't come from a single vendor. It's got to be a combination of vendors bringing their data together. And this is where technologies like advanced analytics, machine learning can help sort of make sense of the data for the user. So I'll give you just a couple of examples to build on that. In the corrective action process, can you imagine if when you went to the measurement of effectiveness phase, which is kind of the almost last phase, that instead of just making more of a subjective assessment of whether this was effective, it could be actually backed up by data, by real data that's coming off the shop floor that is kind of feeding into the CAPA process saying, this is the area that the corrective action was on, here are the goals that we set, and here's the data being presented to the operator that supports it. So that's one example. And the other one is in the area of risk. Everyone knows that quality is becoming more risk-based, but that risk assessment or those risk assessments, that risk analysis that's being done is still very subjective, right? Yes, we have matrices and numbers that we use, but it's not based on real data often. It's based on somebody's knowledge, and that can create a lot of false directions, let's say. So backing risk assessment with real data as well, which would have to be shop floor data, quality control data, SPC data, I think is another specific tactical opportunity within this broader realm.
So it's interesting what you're talking about there is, I mean, we cover a lot of technology, measurement technology, and certainly on the factory floor, a lot of work has been put into interoperability. Machines being able to communicate with other machines no matter what the brand, no matter what the machine is, just this common data sharing so that the entire factory is connected. And so that all the machines kind of know what each other is doing, and there's a lot of synergy that goes on with that, and a lot of that can be gained. It sounds like what you're talking about is that this needs to expand to include the quality function.
Yes, I believe that's the case, but the reason that the I don't even say the word, that you can combine data at the shop floor is that the data is quite similar. Yeah. It's time series data typically, and so you can relate certain time segments, and it's all tagged to equipment numbers and product numbers.
Sure.
Quality management data is much higher level, and it's quite vague in its nature. It's often descriptions, classifications and things like that don't relate well to the machine data. So it's not just about including quality management data in that, let's call it shop floor data. It's actually about linking them.
Okay.
And that's the challenge. And we speak to vendors who are doing the shop floor data, and they fully recognize that they've taken the data as far as they can. And so they reach the ceiling. And we're at sort of above. I look at it in sort of visually as us being a higher level set of data. And we've gone down as far as we can. Somehow we got to bridge the gap.
Yep. Well, maybe we'll be seeing that in the future, and I'm sure ETQ will have a product that does that, right?
Well, it's funny you say that. Yes.
Strange I should mention that. All right. Well, Morgan Palmer, thanks for joining us. Morgan Palmer, CTO of ETQ. Appreciate you taking the time this morning.
All right. Thank you.
Our morning anyway. So that is it for today's QDL. If you have a guest you would like us to bring on or a topic you'd like us to cover, just let us know. Send us your request to qdl@qualitydigest.com, and we will do our best to make that happen. So once again, thanks for joining us. We'll see you at the next QDL. So long.